Hello there and a very warm welcome to another edition of Channels Beam. I am Victor Matthias. Now, though the internet has provided the platform for users to interact with each other irrespective of their location, their age, profession, and ideology, calls for stricter measures to be put in place before users gain access have been on the rise. This, according to them, is to ascertain the identity of everyone online so that appropriate sanctions can be meted out to those responsible when people engage in acts such as cyberbullying using anonymous accounts. This edition of the program will look at how the internet can be better governed and how data gathered from registration can be protected, and of course, security in the social cyberspace. But let's first take a look at the social media trends in the past week before we get to all of that.
In what has been described as the biggest scam in US history, the FBI named 77 Nigerians in a list of fraudsters that have defrauded Americans to the tune of 1.1 billion naira between January and June 2019, using the famous love scam amongst other various schemes. Finally, President Buhari inaugurated his cabinet, and Nigerians were quick to share their thoughts on the ministries ministers were given to man for the second term of the president. While some appointments were applauded, others were seen as otherwise.
Well, there you go. Those were the trends in the past week. But joining us to look at today's topic, we have with us Adedoyin Adedeji. He is a cybersecurity expert. Thanks for joining us on the program today.
Thank you for having me today.
Of course. We also have with us Edward Israel Aide. He is a social media commentator. Thanks as well for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
And joining us via Skype from Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory, Abuja, is Adeboye Adegoke. He is a data privacy evangelist. He works with Paradigm Initiative. Thanks for joining us on the program as well.
Thank you for having me.
Very well. Of course. So, Edward, let me just start with you. I mean, there's been so much talk on social media, people using anonymous accounts, to cause havoc, throw racial slurs, cyberbullying, and all of that. What's going on, actually? This was supposed to be a platform for merriment, so to speak. Now, let me just put it there.
And also for connecting people, which is what the Facebooks and the Twitters of this world set out to do when they established those platforms. But what you found, especially looking at what happened during the investigation of companies like Cambridge Analytica, is that people now use social media as a means to spread hate, spread fear, spread propaganda, spread information that they think will move people in the direction that they want them to go. I think it's a very dangerous trend that, if it is not curbed, has the potential to actually, beyond undermining democracies, as we've seen in during those investigations, they have the potential to actually lead to maybe insurrections and violence and all that. Interestingly, I was watching a documentary, The Great Hack, and it actually showed how that company, Cambridge Analytica, said they used divisive rhetoric between two different tribes in Trinidad and Tobago to make some guys go towards voter apathy as against coming out to vote for their candidate. I felt like the intention then was to make people not come out to vote. What if it had led to these people attacking this other tribe?
Yeah.
Do you understand? So it's a very dangerous trend, and I think it's something that people need to be very wary of generally.
So speaking of being wary of, what steps can we take? I mean, we just saw what happened with Paul Pogba. Just last week's Premier League match where he lost a penalty. There was just so many slurs coming out at him, and one of his teammates says, for anyone to join social media, he has to provide some form of identification, per se, maybe like a government means of identification, maybe a national ID card or maybe a passport data page. I mean, do you think those kind of measures would solve the case?
I think those measures are a bit extreme. And then put into consideration that I'm talking like a Nigerian right now, knowing what the Nigerian government in the past has done with people's data. We've seen examples where the Nigerian Immigration Service actually revealed someone's passport page on social media. I don't think I want I want the Nigerian government to have access to my data. Do you understand? So, in as much as I understand that there's need to curb some of these things, especially the creation and proliferation of troll accounts and anonymous accounts that are then used to advance targeted harassment against different kinds of people. I think asking for government-issued identifications might be a bit too much. Do you understand? Of course, I believe
So
that
it might be counterproductive.
it will be counterproductive.
Let me bring you in. I mean, you are the cybersecurity expert. I mean, how secure can these information even be in the first place?
Well, I think one thing everybody has to understand is the fact that security in itself is not foolproof. No matter how you try to secure something, the truth is there would always still be lapses. And when we talk about cybersecurity, the biggest link, the weakest link when it comes to cybersecurity are the human factor. Okay, so no matter the technology, the facilities we put in place, the question is what is the quality of people that are using these facilities? Okay, recently the cybercrime issues that we had, that the Nigerian was arrested in America recently. Yeah. If you read through the FBI affidavit about him, you could see that yes, it was just a very simple way to probably get into the company by accessing the email account of a top-level official there. Okay, so no matter the information, they actually use the Microsoft solutions and all that, which is quite secured. But ultimately, the people using these facilities, how educated are they? How informed are they about cybersecurity? Okay, so it's not really about the infrastructure itself. It's actually about those that handle this infrastructure, those that handle this data. How informed are they when it comes to this data? So I think it starts with education before we even talk about platforms and facilities, okay? So generally, companies, government need to educate more people. People need to be aware that there are consequences for things you do online, particularly for top-level officials. Because the truth is, more of the low-level officials actually take cybersecurity more seriously than those at the high level. Because we feel, the guys at the bottom will sort things out. You understand? But as we see, in that particular affidavit, you could see that
which that case had a lot of money involved.
Exactly,
I mean, $11 million.
huge, I mean, it's a lot of. So you would actually wonder how simple. I mean, how something as simple as getting access to somebody's email could actually cause so much loss to the company. You understand? So those are the like some of the low level staffs in a lot of ways they take cybersecurity more seriously than even those at the top. Yeah. And if you look
so what can we do? I mean, what kind of education can we give people, to be conscious, to be cybersecurity conscious?
Okay. Well, I think one of the biggest things that most of these criminals use is still goes back to email addresses. Okay. Now, people need to be aware that your email address can actually can cause a whole lot of trouble for you if people have access to it. So people have to be aware that, first of all, you have to be able to identify what fake email, what we call a phishing email looks like. You understand? Because a large amount of cybersecurity related issues that we've had, it's always, most of the time, if you look at it, it's always email based. You understand? Before we talk about platforms and all that. Yeah. So I think number one, people have to be aware that their emails actually is like your gateway to your online identity. You understand? So you have to be careful about it. Yeah. Then for information security experts or information professionals, you also need to always do what we call audits. Okay. Sometimes
So could this be quarterly,
this could be
monthly?
monthly audit of your IT infrastructure, meaning that, for example, this person has left this company and he still has access to his email. I mean, you've not removed his email.
Yeah.
He still has access to some information online, and he has left the company. So for information security officials of each company, they need to do audit every month. Okay, who have access to what? Can we reset your password? Like create policies that okay, maybe every two weeks or every month you reset your password. You do all those things. So some of these policies can go a very long way to improve security.
Well, very well. Let me just bring Adegoke to this conversation. Adegoke, if you can hear me, of course. So speaking about what Edward, let me just bring back what Edward talked about now, how at the point, someone's information was put out on social media. Basically, do we have data privacy laws in Nigeria?
Unfortunately, no, but there is something close to it, which is what is called in the Nigerian Data Protection Regulation that was put together by NITA. But there are a lot of controversy around that regulation. There is a lot of pushback from telcos because telcos are not comfortable with NITA regulating them. They believe that NCC is statutorily responsible for regulating them, but that is just there. But that is what we have now that we can hang on to as some form of a system or regulation that is in place. But the good thing is that there is a data protection bill that has gone to the National Assembly that is also at the table of Mr. President that is just waiting for the president to sign. If he signs that, I think that will kind of signal what at least represents the direction globally in terms of data protection regulation, something that is done in the order of the EU GDPR, something that's similar to that, the Nigerian version. So if that is signed into law, I think we'll be in a better place. But for now, we need to embrace what we have, which is the Niger Data Protection Regulation. For now, that is what we have, and that is what we can hang on to. Although there are still conversations that is ongoing about its enforcement, whether it can be an effective means to protect data. But I mean, that is just that. At least that's something that we have, and it's only when we test it that we can know how effective that it can be.
Well, it did. So how do we now tackle the issue of people using anonymous accounts, to perpetrate all of these acts that you made mention of?
Yeah, so I think that there is conversation around the principle of anonymity, which is how best can we undo anonymity. I think there is an European standard, for example, as to what anonymity should mean and what it cannot mean. So, for example, anonymity should be allowed within the digital platform. But what are the circumstances under which anonymity should not be allowed, or under what circumstances can we break the rule of anonymity? I think what happened that what we are discussing right now is a clear example. If somebody has committed a crime using anonymity, then in that case, the truth of the matter is that government has whatever it takes, even if you are anonymous, to find you. So the interesting thing is that while we advocate that anonymity should be retained, people should be allowed to be anonymous on social media, there are conditions or there are situations that warrant breaking that anonymity, especially when people hide under anonymity to commit crime. So those circumstances should exist. For example, there is a recent occurrence of a Nigerian guy that was just arrested who allegedly used hide under digital platform, used digital system to commit a fraud in the US. He was anonymous while doing all of that, but because the FBI needed to find him, they did whatever they needed to do.
All
They
right.
worked together with telcos, they worked together with technology giants to be able to find him. So that is the approach we should follow. If somebody has committed a crime, of course, the person has given away his right, and such person should be found and brought to book. But the important thing, which I'm going to say lastly, is that anybody can be found, irrespective of how anonymous they seem on social media. But that should only happen because somebody has committed a crime
All
and
right.
they need to be
All
investigated. It
right.
should not be made a blanket provision.
Just hold it for a bit there. We'll come back to you in a bit. Of course, guys, just hold your thoughts for a bit. We'll take a quick break, and we'll be back in a moment to continue this discussion. Please stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. We still have with us our panelists in the studio as well as on Skype from Abuja, talking about these issues. I mean, he was trying to make talking about how you can fish out people that use anonymous accounts to. So it comes back to the question. I mean, is the internet governed? How can you do that? How can you fish someone out?
So I'll say that, like you mentioned, if the government wants to find anybody, they will find the person. Do you understand? Now the issue is that would technological giants like Facebook, Twitter, Google, would they actually open up their data to prying eyes of the government if government doesn't show just cause? Do you understand? Because if that doesn't happen, you might find fascist or dictatorial governments just looking for an opportunity to get at someone. Do you understand? Always just expressing their rights to free speech. Do you understand? But having said that, I would say that it is important as well for the technological giants to do as much as possible to try and, I don't know, maybe track social media usage. Do you understand? And watch patterns. Of course, you see Twitter do it a lot of times. After a while, they just delete some accounts because they would have maybe monitored those accounts and realized that these accounts are engaging in maybe some form of actions that are against their own Twitter rules. Do you understand? And then even as individuals, I think what we can do, like one thing I do personally is if I find an account that I think is a fraudulent account, or the account is engaging in targeted harassment against someone, I will report the account. Individuals need to also help the social media platforms to curb all these things. So people who are trolling Pogba, for instance, I don't need to be engaging those accounts. All I need to do is I report those accounts.
From a cybersecurity expert, how do we do that?
Well, I think social media companies still need to put more controls in place. For example, I know there are a lot of privacy settings now on most of the social media platforms, but I think there still needs to be more education about your privacy settings, because most people still don't understand how these privacy settings work. So I think social media companies need to make it easier for people to choose their privacy settings, one. Then I think secondly also, when things like this happen, like you said, reports, you understand? But I think social media companies still need to do more in controlling how some of these accounts are being created and quicken their time to dictate and remove them. You understand?
Well, Boy, let me also come back to you. Speaking of how we can, pretty much use government paraphernalia, to fish out people who the government want to fish out. Wouldn't that be going maybe farther than the usual? Wouldn't people complain about using certain methods?
So that's why initially when I was speaking, I talked about the dangers of having emotional reaction to situation. Now, if we want to address issues, we have to be very robust in our response. Now, there is a threat that exists when you say, oh, government should go against people using anonymity to commit crime. There's a threat inherent in that, which is the fact that government will not even can, government will also use that as opportunity to go against dissent or people who criticize them too heavily. So how do we create a balance in all of that? And that's where laws are good, and also commitment to implementing those laws. We've talked earlier today whether we have a data protection law, whether we have a data protection legislation. So we cannot, in the first instance, start to implement all of that without having a system of regulation in place that is enforceable. And that is why Nigeria must get its data protection bill on the table. Also, more importantly, you would also recall that Nigeria has a digital rights and freedom bill, which the president did not sign in the last
initially
dispensation, which is back, which is fortunately back in the National Assembly. Now, the beauty of those laws is that they kind of create a system of checks and balances, in which case, if the government, for example, using the law enforcement to go overboard, maybe in the name of fighting crime, start to go against journalists, start to go against critics, then those kind of laws makes provision whereby you can hold governments accountable through the judiciary. In other words, there are provisions in those laws that says that you cannot, under the guise of fighting crime, arrest people for expressing legitimate, opinions or criticism against the government. So that is how we need to approach these issues.
All right. So, I mean, would you recommend that if we have these laws in place, would you recommend that people provide such information, such as national ID cards and maybe the data page of their national passports, international passports, before having access to social media?
I mean, absolute no. I think the first speaker spoke to that, and I agree with him that that would be an extreme measure. Well, I don't think that's where we want to go now. The concerns are there, the issues are there, but I don't think the way to react to it is to start asking for people to, because those kind of responses to, they have their own downside too. And if you go that way, it will just be synonymous to, throwing the baby away with the bathwater. So we have to be very careful on what we are asking for, because they have implications themselves. So that is definitely a no-no for me. And I think from even policy conversation on these issues globally, I don't think that is a path anybody wants to go. For me, this is just emotional reaction to the problem. When there is an issue such as what happened to Paul Pogba, people tend to emotionally react to the issue because of how deeply it hurts people's feeling, and how badly it feels that people can go to that level, to racially abuse people using anonymous names and identity on social media. So people tend to emotionally react, and that's what we are seeing. But when we want to have policy conversation, we have to create a more robust approach into how we arrive at it. We don't want to create a policy that we create more problems that it's supposed to solve.
All right. Like you said, the Digital Rights and Inclusion Bill is again in the House of Representatives. Hopefully, this time around, those things that the government complained about before they rejected it the last time out, hopefully those things have been corrected and would perhaps have that bill passed, and we have,
some movement in
some,
that.
exactly, yeah. But I have to say thank you, Boye, of course, for joining us from Abuja via Skype. I have to say thank you to you as well, Adedoyin Adedeji, cybersecurity expert, as well as Edward Israel.
Thank you very much for having me.
Social media commentator. Thanks once again
Thank you
for
very
being on
much
the program
for
and sharing your
thanks.
thoughts. We'll be back with the most viewed videos on our YouTube channel in the past week. Please stay with us.
Secretary from Nigeria came, and about 30 people demonstrated against him, and then the police was called, and they calmed the situation, and the secretary or minister, who he was, drove away with his car, and everything was over.
We begin this week's most viewed videos with the response of the German police on the assault on former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu in Nuremberg, Germany.
No arrest, nothing. The police calmed the situation. There were about 30 persons who demonstrated against this minister, who he was, and he get back in his car and drove away and flew back to Munich, I think Munich, and then back to Nigeria.
It is followed by the Adamawa communities, whose link to some parts of the country have been cut off by floods. Next up in third is the raid on former Lagos governor's resident, Akinwumi Ambode in Epe, his local government area. While second place sees parishioners mourning a murdered priest in Enugu, southeast Nigeria. And first place is the return to the country of former Deputy Senate President Ike Ekweremadu from Nuremberg, Germany, after he was attacked during a program he was to deliver the keynote address.
I think it was just some people who are misdirected, misguided, because they were, I had a feeling that they were under influence of alcohol or drugs, so they don't represent the feelings of our people.
And that's the program this week. Let us keep the conversation and predictions for the new season going on. Just send them to the social media addresses showing on your screen. And don't forget to include the hashtag as well. Bye for now, and thank you for watching. I'm Victor Matthias.